The judge has ruled against Blake Lively, saying her emotional distress claims against Justin Baldoni are officially dead.
Blake Lively basically withdrew her claims of emotional distress caused by Justin Baldoni in her lawsuit. If Blake Lively actually baptized her children.
He wrote this morning that Baldoni's motion to compel is denied based on plaintiff's representation that the relevant claims will be withdrawn. That's the key here. Lively's request that because the parties have agreed to dismiss the 10th and 11th cause, the court exercise its inherent authority and authority under Rule 15 to dismiss them without prejudice is denied without prejudice to renewal. So they're stopping it. Just as Ron said, she can't have her cake and eat it too. Nice try, girl. Nope. If it's dismissed, you don't get to come bring it back. It's not with or without prejudice. I forget. Sorry, I'm not a lawyer. This is a lot of what the case is about. Now, she has other claims, of course, and other things, but this emotional distress is a big part of the damages. So to see her finally reveal this is big. And I've seen defenders of Blake. Well, of course she did this. Why should she have to release her medical information?
Blake Lively is facing the consequences of a major PR catastrophe, and this story is only getting darker. The public meltdown we've all been watching unfold isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a full-scale career implosion. When the judge ruled against Blake Lively's emotional distress claims against Justin Baldoni, it wasn't just a legal defeat. It was a massive reputation-destroying event that could mark the end of her career. The truth?
Okay, so this all started when Lively filed a lawsuit last December alleging that Baldoni sexually harassed her on set and orchestrated a smear campaign against her. In January, Baldoni countersued Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist for $400 million, alleging the couple sought to steal and hijack his movie and defame and extort him.
It's far worse than we imagined. For months, we've heard rumors, speculation, and whispers about what was really going on behind the scenes. Blake Lively, the Hollywood Golden Girl, made claims of emotional distress, allegedly caused by Justin Baldoni's actions. She claimed she was suffering, emotionally destroyed. But what happened in court proved her story was a house of lies. When it came time for Blake to back up her claims, he fell apart. She couldn't provide any solid evidence, no therapist's notes, no medical reports, no proof at all. The judge slammed the door shut on Blake's emotional distress case. In a move that could define the trajectory of her entire career, the judge declared her emotional distress claims to be dead in the water. And what does Blake do? Tries to spin it. She and her PR team scrambled to make it sound like a mutual decision to withdraw the claims. But let's not fool ourselves. This wasn't mutual. This was a crushing blow to Blake's credibility, a public humiliation on the world stage. What happened next? Blake tried to bring in her best friend, Taylor Swift, to help save her image. But Taylor, who had already been at the center of Blake's story for years, wasn't having any of it. Taylor didn't even acknowledge Blake's frantic attempts to reach out. Imagine, Blake Lively sent multiple texts, voicemails, and emails to Taylor Swift, begging for reconciliation. What did Taylor do? Ignored every single one. No response, no text back. Not even a thank you for the messages. Taylor Swift, the so-called godmother of Blake's children, completely cut off. This is the same Taylor Swift who Blake has used in countless interviews as her moral compass, the embodiment of wholesome friendships in Hollywood. But what Blake didn't expect was for Taylor to walk away without a word. She left Blake in the dust. And the worst part? Blake was desperate for Taylor's approval, begging her to remember their decade of trust.
So could she refile the emotional distress claims later? Well, the judge left that up to the two sides to sort out. But as we have seen, they haven't really been able to sort out too much on their own. Lively's lawyers releasing a statement about this latest decision from the judge saying Ms. Lively has offered to dismiss those claims because they are no longer necessary. Guys?
Okay, thanks very much. So is this a victory for Baldoni?
Small victory for him. I mean, basically, Lively wanted it both ways, right? She wanted to say, I don't want to have to turn over my medical records, and I want to be able to potentially file these charges again later. The judge is in effect saying you won't be able to file them again. There's an opening, a potential opening, but in effect saying you can't do it, and that in and of itself is a small loss for her, but it doesn't really affect the large case here.
What are the chances this case goes to trial?
Very high. I don't see how they avoid trial. I mean, people don't believe it, but I don't see how they get out of this at this point. They're suing each other, right? Who's going to drop the case? There's no way he's going to drop it considering where he is right now, right? So is she going to settle for a lot of money? No way. So I think this becomes like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. One of these cases people said, oh, there's no way it'll actually go to trial. And then it actually goes to trial. So I'm betting on this case going to trial.
And I'm betting that we will be covering it extensively.
We will. Yeah.
Dan Abrams.
Safe bet.
Thank you so much for being a part of our coverage.
And to mend their relationship. But Taylor, who has had enough of Blake's antics, moved on. But the drama doesn't end there. While Blake tried to manipulate the media, pushing false narratives to save face, her godmother story started to unravel. The truth came out. Taylor Swift couldn't have been Blake's godmother because they didn't even meet until 2015, a year after Blake's first child, James, was born in 2014. The timeline doesn't lie. Blake had tried to tell the world that Taylor was her firstborn's godmother, parading her as proof of her moral standing in Hollywood. But this was a PR stunt from the beginning. The real godmother, her sister. Blake had built a false narrative about her connection with Taylor. And when the world started to question it, Blake had nowhere to hide. The cracks started to show. Let's take a closer look at what Blake really lost. First, her emotional distress claims were completely discredited. When the judge denied her request to refile, it was a monumental legal blow. But that's not all. Her carefully crafted image as the perfect relatable star, someone we could all root for, has now been shattered. She's no longer the relatable, down-to-earth star we thought she was. Now, she's just another celebrity caught up in lies, trying to play the victim when it suits her. The Hollywood charm? Gone. But instead of taking responsibility, Blake attempted to distract the public by launching a new product, a vodka line. A brand new alcohol product from the woman who has publicly declared multiple times that she doesn't drink alcohol. A sober woman now selling vodka? It's almost laughable. And the timing? Even worse. While she's being roasted in the media and the courtroom, Blake decides to launch a product she doesn't even consume, hoping the public will overlook her public humiliation. But that's not how it works. The public saw right through her attempt to divert attention. Blake's decision to push a vodka iced tea product right as her legal and personal life were spiraling. A classic Hollywood misstep. TikTok exploded, with mockery, as users immediately called out her contradictions. How can she sell a product she doesn't drink? It's not just embarrassing, it's desperate. And when Blake's PR team tried to sell it as some grand brand-building move, the public wasn't fooled. They could see this for what it really was, a desperate attempt to distract from the fallout of her legal mess. Blake Lively thought she could control her narrative. She thought the media would continue to love her, continue to buy the perfect girl next door image she'd spent years building. But now, as the truth comes to light, she's being exposed for what she really is. A manipulative celebrity trying to use others to save herself. Her emotional distress claims have fallen apart. Her godmother story? Debunked. And worst of all, Taylor Swift has washed her hands of the entire situation. No more pictures, no more public support, nothing. This is the collapse of Blake Lively's career, and it's happening right before our eyes. Her Hollywood
This is how Brian Friedman and Justin Baldoni are going to win this case. You don't have to take all 20 of her allegations. Pick your top 4, right? And show. You don't have to take Baldoni's word on the birth scene. Listen to Adam Monsheim, who is telling you he was there. And by the way, here are the raw film outtakes from the whole thing, where you can see she is wearing black shorts. She does not have just a thin piece of fabric separating her genitalia from everybody there. And let's sit and listen to her alleged multiple requests for a cover, which everyone blew her. I bet it's not going to be there.
Persona is gone, and the people who once adored her are now questioning everything about her. Her PR stunts, her godmother lie, and her attempt to frame Justin Baldoni as the villain have all backfired spectacularly. Blake Lively thought she could rewrite her story, but in reality, she's become the punchline of her own drama. The fall from grace isn't just happening in the courtroom, it's happening in real time for the entire world to watch. She went from one of Hollywood's golden girls to a cautionary tale of what happens when you try to fake your way to the top, but now Blake has nowhere left to hide. No emotional distress claim, no godmother, no Taylor Swift. She's standing alone in the rubble of her own creation. This is the reality check Hollywood stars rarely get. The truth always comes out. For Blake Lively, the truth is devastating. Blake Lively's worst nightmare has come true, and the fallout from her courtroom failure is more dramatic than anything Hollywood could ever script. The shocking truth about Blake's desperate attempts to cover up her lies is now out in the open, and it's safe to say that the career she spent years building is officially in free fall. For months, Blake's emotional distress claims were touted as the biggest case of the year. But when the judge completely shut her down, those claims collapsed in an instant. The once glamorous Hollywood star found herself exposed. No evidence to back her story, no proof of her suffering, and worst of all, no chance of redemption. This wasn't a minor defeat. This was a complete legal meltdown, but Blake wasn't ready to accept defeat. She didn't just withdraw her claims quietly. No, she and her team tried to spin this crushing loss into some kind of win. They suggested that the emotional distress claims were dismissed because of a mutual decision. Mutual? No one bought it. Everyone could see right through the lies. This wasn't a mutual decision. It was a desperate attempt to cover up her humiliation, and the drama didn't stop there. After being publicly shredded in court, Blake turned to the one person she thought could save her: Taylor Swift. The media had always portrayed their friendship as one of Hollywood's most iconic bonds. Taylor, the so-called godmother to Blake's children, was meant to be the ultimate symbol of Blake's wholesome image. But when Blake turned to Taylor for help, she was met with silence. Not a word, not a response, not even a simple, "I'm sorry, we need to talk." Taylor didn't need to say anything. Her silence spoke volumes. Blake had been abandoned. But it gets worse. Blake's godmother narrative wasn't just fake. It was built on a complete lie. She'd claimed that Taylor Swift was the godmother to her firstborn, James. But the timeline didn't add up. Taylor didn't even meet Blake until 2015, a full year after James was born. Blake had been telling the world a story that wasn't true. She had used her so-called godmother connection to polish her image, but now the truth was out, and the public saw her for what she truly was: just another celebrity trying to manipulate the narrative to her advantage. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Blake's emotional distress case wasn't the only thing that fell apart. When the judge ruled against her, it wasn't just the case that was dismissed. It was Blake's entire image. She built a reputation on being the girl next door, the relatable, charming Hollywood sweetheart. But now, the cracks in that image are showing, and it's not a pretty picture. Blake's next move? A vodka line. You heard that right. A woman who has publicly claimed to be sober for years decided that the best way to distract from her legal woes was to launch a line of vodka iced teas. Talk about tone-deaf timing. The public wasn't impressed. In fact, they were outraged. How could someone who doesn't drink alcohol suddenly push it as a product? The timing was so poorly thought out that it felt like a desperate move to deflect attention from her falling career. But instead of diverting attention, it only made things worse. People saw it for what it was: a last-ditch attempt to save a sinking ship. Blake's PR team did everything in their power to paint the vodka launch as some kind of empowering brand move, but the internet didn't buy it. TikTok exploded with ridicule, calling her out for the sheer hypocrisy of it all. Why would a sober woman suddenly launch a vodka line? The public saw the vodka launch as exactly what it was: a desperate distraction from Blake's epic failure in the courtroom. But this wasn't the first time Blake had been caught in a lie. The godmother story? Exposed. The emotional distress? Claim? Debunked. And now, the vodka launch? Mocked. Blake had tried to position herself as the perfect Hollywood darling, but the truth came crashing down around her, piece by piece. As if that weren't enough, her failed PR attempts weren't going unnoticed. The media that once praised her every move now started to question her motives. How could Blake Lively, the queen of Hollywood cool, become the punchline of her own story? The truth is, Blake's career was built on the lies she told, the image she projected, and the narrative she wanted the public to believe. But once the cracks started to show, it became clear. Blake wasn't the victim. She was the architect of her own downfall. It's now clear that Blake's time as the Hollywood sweetheart is over. Her emotional distress claim, dead. Her godmother narrative, destroyed. Her career, a thing of the past. The public is no longer buying what she's selling. Blake's once perfect image has collapsed under the weight of her own lies. She tried to frame Justin Baldoni as the villain. She tried to drag Taylor Swift back into the limelight. And when neither of those tactics worked, she tried to distract us all with a vodka iced tea. But the public isn't fooled. Blake Lively's brand is officially in tatters. And the irony? Blake's career has crashed, and now she's left to pick up the pieces. There's no redemption arc for her, no comeback story. She tried to script her own ending, but in the end, she wrote herself out of Hollywood's story. The public has moved on, and Blake Lively has been left behind. Her career was supposed to be a fairy tale, but it's become a cautionary tale instead. The rise and fall of Blake Lively was never about her acting career. It was about her manipulation of the truth, her ability to create the perfect public persona, and her failure to back it up when the lights were brightest. The Hollywood fairy tale, finished. The PR stunts, exposed. And Blake's image, shattered. What happens next? It's hard to say. The world has already seen Blake for what she truly is, a woman willing to do anything to keep the spotlight on herself, even if it means using others, lying, and manipulating her way to the top. But the truth is, Blake Lively is no longer the person Hollywood wanted her to be. The image she built, destroyed. The stories she told, exposed. And the career she worked so hard to craft, gone. There's no comeback from this. Not for Blake. The damage is done. The public has spoken, and the truth can't be hidden anymore. Blake Lively tried to fake her way to the top, but in the end, it was the truth that took her down. And the world isn't forgetting it anytime soon. In the end, Blake's story is over, and what remains is a public relations disaster. Her once perfect image, destroyed. The emotional distress claims, dead. The godmother lie, exposed. Her reputation, in tatters. The only thing Blake has left now is the embarrassment of a failed lawsuit, a crumbling career, and a broken public image. So, what's next for Blake? Will she ever recover from this? Probably not. When you lose everything, your reputation, your image, your credibility, it's not easy to come back. Especially when the world has already seen you for what you really are. Blake thought she could play the victim, but now she's the one who's been exposed, and no amount of vodka, iced tea, or PR tricks can fix that.